Hey everyone, this is Mark Ryan coming at you with another video. Today I have another special guest. I call him Matthew Abolitionist, and he is an abolitionist working on what I think is a really important movie and a really important movement. Why? Because it's grounded in the authority of God's word. But with that, hey, Matthew, would you like to take a moment to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm a street preacher who lives in the Atlanta area of Georgia, and I've been an abolitionist of abortion since um, probably late 2015, early 2016. And I've been active at seeking to change the cultural norms concerning people's opinion about abortion and people's understanding of abortion. And I've been trying to do that through street preaching and through mass media messaging and through art. And I've my most recent, I guess the biggest piece of art that I've been working on towards that end is a movie titled Abolitionist, and it's about um, basically how to abolish abortion in America and the current state of the anti-abortion uh, movements in America, comparing and contrasting the pro-life movement with the abolitionist movement, and doing that through storytelling. It's not strictly a documentary. There's also a fictional component to the film. So I've been working on that for the past around year and a half, along with continuing to go to high schools to preach to students and teach them about abortion and the gospel, going to strip clubs, going to abortion facilities, going to gay pride festivals, all types of places where there's a lot of people assembled together, where I can preach the gospel and reach a lot of people at once concerning the genocide that we're living in, that many people are silent about. And I'm seeking to break that silence on a consistent basis.
No one say it, like I've seen several of your videos. You've got a YouTube channel
Yeah.
that shows some of these encounters and everything. And we'll get into this important movie that's coming out in the next segment. But as far as street preaching and everything, hey, Montana, in my hometown, like there's about 6,000 people in my town,
Okay.
and there were two street preachers, and one of them moved to Georgia, pretty pretty close
Okay.
to Atlanta and stuff. Um, but one of them would preach next to our grocery store and on the
Nice.
sidewalk, because hey, you can't preach on their property. The
Right.
business wouldn't want you to do that. You might scare away people. And so
Yeah.
eventually they told him, hey, you can't even preach on the sidewalk next to our business, because then we won't allow you in our store. And
Okay.
in my hometown, like we have two grocery stores and that's it. And so now there's only one grocery store you can go to, but that shows kind of maybe the hostility, if you want to use that word, to street evangelism too, where hey,
Right.
don't even preach next to our business, because essentially because we care more about money than we do about people's eternal souls.
Right.
But we had two. One moved down to Georgia. You stole
Okay.
them from us. And but I have such high regard for people who do street evangelism. Ray Comfort and abolitionists. A lot of abolitionists are out on the streets talking to people, sharing the gospel and everything. Do you have
Yeah.
maybe a street evangelism encounter that rises to the forefront of your memory, one, in Georgia by chance?
Well, I had a similar situation to the one you described, where I was preaching outside of a Target um, store, and the cops were called by, I think, the management at Target, and they didn't want me preaching on the public easement next to the store, and now I'm not allowed inside that Target. They've banned me from shopping
Mhm.
at that Target, like the situation
Mhm.
of that street preacher in Montana. And so that's one I can think of. I recently had a really hostile encounter with a woman who I think came out of a restaurant that I was preaching next to. It was an open air restaurant, so they could hear me pretty clearly and see me pretty clearly. She came out with a container of honey and started launching honey at me. And as I and around that same time, the manager of the restaurant was pushing and shoving me near a decently busy road. So that was pretty intense, but thankfully it calmed down eventually, and I was able to talk with some people. But I've encountered a lot of crazy stuff. It's just kind of part of the job description. It just comes with the job. It's just a part of what a street preacher should expect, because people hate truth. They love worshiping themselves. They love the lies of Satan. And when you expose the evil that they practice and love, they react violently and just very vehemently in opposition.
And, you know, that makes me think of, I don't know who said it, but when Christians preach the gospel out in the streets and stuff, or when the gospel's preached, people will either get mad or they'll get converted, or both. They'll get mad and then they'll get converted. And so it is good to see people sometimes get mad in that, hey, there's conviction going on maybe, or God's working in their life somehow too, right?
Right. Yeah. That's the worst type of crowd to preach to, is just people who just don't care at all and just ignore you and just are so apathetic and indifferent. When someone's actually yelling at you, it's almost feels better, because you feel like something's being accomplished. Like there's conviction going on. Like they're actually listening to you. They're feeling the weight of what you're saying to some extent. And so, you can get into a conversation with them and try to say, like, why are you angry? You can get down to the reasons with them and try to reason with them. Why are you responding this way? What is your worldview? What are your opinions about this? And I try to break that down and show them how what they're trusting in, what they're putting faith in, leads to absurdity, because they're not trusting in revelation from God. They're trusting in revelation from their own mind. So,
well, that makes sense in that when someone's apathetic, it's hard to be apathetic towards the things of God. And when God does a work in someone's life, I in my life, in my experience, I haven't seen people be apathetic when God is at work doing something. I see more of that anger or God work, some emotions at play, at least, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And beyond that, do you have any stories or testimonies by chance of, hey, maybe your ministry impacted such a person? And when one person makes a bold stance, maybe street evangelizing or a bold stance for Christ in an area, a lot of times it will empower other Christians, other believers to make a bold stance as well. But do you have any testimonies of someone who was either impacted by your ministry on the streets, or other believers who were emboldened to serve Christ with your example?
Yeah. I think it was several months ago. I was out preaching in Atlanta, and these two women, they pulled up lawn chairs nearby me and seemed to be really enjoying the preaching. And after a while, this woman came up to me and expressed her appreciation for the preaching, and said that she didn't want to burn, and that she indicated that she wanted to follow Christ, and that she hadn't been following Christ. And she had tears in her eyes, and she gave me a hug. And it was just like this super powerful moment where street preaching was used by God to like really convict this woman and bring her to a position where she actually wanted to change her life and follow Christ. So that was one of the coolest things I've ever seen. So praise God for that.
And, you know, a lot of times just being a Christian and doing, I think, the work that you're out doing for Christ, it can be discouraging at times. It's hard to wake up and do it over and over again. But when we see something like that happen and the gospel gets through to someone, and hey, maybe they pass from death to life or make a profession of faith in Jesus Christ, well, that's fuel to the fire, and that gets us going the next day
Right.
to all over again. Hey, let's pray for that to happen in someone else's life today too.
Right.
But with that, I think we'll kind of flow into the next segment. I have some
Okay.
questions about this movie that's should be coming out pretty soon. Again, when do you think that we can see or expect to see Abolitionist, the movie, come out per se?
It's hard to know exactly right now, but I'm hoping by summertime of 2022.
Mhm.
So we're trying to get it viewed on the streaming service, the upcoming streaming service named Lore.tv. So they have to launch first, and then the movie has to meet its funding goal
Mhm.
on there in order to finally be able to be watched. And when that happens, then it will finally be released. So
Okay, that's pretty neat, actually. This is a rabbit trail, but I think that follows kind of the Dorian principle, if you've heard of that, where we don't. Okay, it's where we don't exchange the gospel for money, if that makes sense. Um, but with that, my second question is kind of, hey, what makes this movie different than every other pro-life movie out there? What's the difference between this one and others?
well, it's not a pro-life movie. It is an anti-abortion movie, but it's focused on a biblical doctrine named abolitionism, and it's focused on contrasting that biblical doctrine with what is utilized by many today when it comes to abortion, which is a pro-life methodology that is secular and humanistic, that is not biblical. It is rooted in pragmatism and the fear of man. So the abolitionist, the movie, is basically a movie targeting Christians, trying to show them what it looks like to live true Christianity in a genocide or in the midst of any widespread dehumanizing evil. And it does delve into the history of abolitionism when it comes to the abolitionists of slavery in early America. And the movie shows how what we're doing today against abortion as abolitionists is very similar to what the abolitionists of slavery, like William Lloyd Garrison, Wilberforce, what they were doing. And the movie is seeking to exhort and to teach believers mainly. Unbelievers could benefit from the film, of course, but it's mainly for believers to show them how to practically live out obedience to God's commands in their current situation of being in a genocide right now in America. So in order to do that, it utilizes a lot of body cam footage from work on the streets, kind of showing people firsthand what it's like to do street evangelism and to have conversations with lost people and to properly engage them with apologetics. That's one component. There's also a variety of interviews of different abolitionists in the movement who live in different parts of the country, gaining information from them about how they practice abolitionism and showing them, at least some of them, in action on the streets, showing it practically applied in their lives. And then weaved through all of this is also a small, I'd say narrative, a fictional narrative, that will, I think, make the film more interesting and probably hold people's attention more than if it wasn't there. And that's going to end, that's going to end the film. That will be the ending of the film will involve that in the manner that I think will really kind of shock people. It's going to be a very unexpected, crazy, mind twisting ending. So I'm looking forward to that. The things that,
and this will be kind of the perspective of not just one abolitionist, then it's going to be abolitionists throughout the United States then, is that right? Or it will, okay.
Yeah.
And
like follow me on my journey to go and interview these different abolitionists.
Okay, good. And how long did it take you to make Abolitionist by chance, or for this group? Because there's probably how many people are involved in producing this movie too, by chance?
Well, I think we interviewed 12 or 13 people, and then there is my cinematographer Mauricio Belgrano, and me, and we had some actors. A woman named Bonnie Coffey is an actor in the film, and then there's another woman, I think her name might be Michelle, who is an actor for us. And then three other people, three other local abolitionists. No, four other local Georgia abolitionists. Yeah, I might be forgetting someone, but
yeah, and you don't want to forget. That's one of those things, you don't want to forget anyone when you're, you know, when you're talking about that, for sure, because there's a lot of people involved then too. Were there any roadblocks, major roadblocks in producing the film by chance, or?
God has really blessed this project. I feel like there's so many things that could have gone wrong that didn't go wrong, but I would just say the biggest hindrance to the film getting done sooner is just time, lack of time or availability to work on it, and being basically living in a different city than my cinematographer. So
there'd be a few obstacles there then, yeah. And what's your favorite part of the movie too then? Like, do you have a favorite part by chance that, you know, comes to mind?
Yeah.
Or is that do you want to keep that secret, or do you want to share that part of it? Or
I'm not going to share the contents of that part, but I'm just going to say it's the final moments of the movie. Like the last minute of the movie is my favorite part. And it's, yeah, people aren't going to be expecting it.
Okay. And hey, are people going to need a box of Kleenexes to watch this movie? Like, yeah.
They might. They might. I mean, while editing this movie and like listening to the soundtrack for this movie, I definitely teared up like at different times. So it's probably going to tug at people's heartstrings.
And I know we talked about it earlier, like off camera, but I can't remember if I asked, hey, where can people watch Abolitionist anyways? Where's that going to be shown at?
Hopefully, Lord willing, it will be a streaming service named lore.tv. They haven't launched as a streaming service platform in the fullest extent yet, so they're still working on that, but yeah, that's where it will be featured, Lord willing.
And I understand Marcus Pittman is kind of overseeing Lord TV and trying to get Christians there to kind of support Christian content that will really have a deep impact on people.
Right.
And this next question, hey, is there a project after this one that you've been thinking of at all, or anything there?
I've considered making another film, but I don't have an idea yet for what that would look like, or if I'm going to do that. So,
well, and a lot of work goes into making a movie like this, and you've probably spent how long has this project taken again?
It's been we started in August of 2020, so it's coming up on like a year and a half. Yeah, just hours and hours and hours of editing over many days.
What response, if any, are you hoping from this movie? How do you hope, Christians, because that's the primary audience for the movie, how do you hope Christians respond to it?
I hope that people really love it so that they tell their friends about it and they promote it and they say, hey, you got to see this movie. This is awesome. So that like a bunch of Christians see it and they like invite people over to their houses to watch it, and show it at their churches and stuff. I just want as many Christians or just as many people as possible to see it. So hopefully, I mean, I'm assuming it's going to info about it's going to be spread by word of mouth and through social media. And I'm going to be dedicating money to advertising it. So,
and perhaps people watch this video and they're thinking, hey, like we don't want anything in return, Matt, but we want to come alongside of you as like a co-laborer and help this abolitionist movement, this movie. What can people do to support this now?
There's a Patreon page for the film called, if you go to Patreon and you look up Abolitionist Projects, you can find it there and you can become a monthly donor. Or you can just give one time and then cut it off. And so that's one way that we've received support.
That's fine. I'll try to put a link to that in the video in the description so that people can easily find it and access that if they watch it. Again, this small channel here won't get 1 million views for sure, but hopefully it helps this movement out, this biblical movement out.